समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है, अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या समझ में नहीं आया।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है, अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉपअप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
अब समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
For the last 2 days, Pakistani and Afghan troops have been trading savage fire up and down the length of that 2,500 kilometer border known as the Durand Line. This isn't the first or even necessarily the worst series of clashes the two countries have had. But what's significant is that the rise of the Taliban to power in Kabul was meant to mark an end to the conflict. Pakistan had hoped the Taliban would drop the claims of every Afghan government before then to have sovereignty south of the existing border up to the Indus River. That isn't happening. And the question is, why? The Taliban were, after all, given safe haven, money and protection by Pakistan. Why won't the Taliban return the favor by giving up their demand for a Pashtun state? Hi, I'm Praveen Swami, and in this episode of Security Code, I'm going to be unpacking some of the issues around this. The curtain came down on the regal steps of the town hall in Kolkata one gentle morning in 1871, as Chief Justice John Paxton Norman made his way from his carriage to the courtroom. For the past 2 years, his lordship had heard the case of Amir and Hashmadad Khan, two very elderly businessmen who were alleged to have sent funds to ethnic Pashtun rebels fighting on the British Raj's northwest frontier, which we today call Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. The judge threw bricks at his attacker, but Abdullah's curved Gurkha knife succeeded in cutting through his abdomen and carving between his spine and his left shoulder. The next morning, Judge Norman was dead. Little evidence of Abdullah's actual motives emerged during the trial. Asked for his plea, he replied with these cryptic words. I quote, "The earth is sunk below the water, and the men have gone up to the sky. The dog is eating the wall." Take that as a sign of mental illness, if you will, or of poetry, should you so prefer. But the motives never did quite come out. This week, when Taliban Foreign Minister Amir Khan Muttaqi visited the great seminary at Deoband, much media discourse cast it as a pilgrimage to the theological tradition from which his own alma mater, the Darul Uloom Haqqaniya, draws its roots. The visit, which came even as the Taliban and the Pakistan army traded fire on their border, in fact had a much more complex message underlying it. Even though Deoband has been an incubator of reactionary, backward-looking Islam, it also represented a long tradition of resistance to both British imperialism and to the idea of Pakistan. As the jihadists of the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, that's the Pakistani jihadists under the Taliban umbrella or the TTP, as they carry out ever more lethal attacks on the Pakistan army, asking for a quasi-independent Sharia government state in Pakistan's northwest, the Taliban has granted them haven in the mountains running from Angur Adda all the way to Logar. The Taliban might have been funded and sheltered by the Inter-Services Intelligence Directorate, but Muttaqi's visit signals they aren't willing to run a vassal state that does whatever Pakistan asks them to. The Taliban's factions are nurturing the TTP, seeing it both as an ally and because Taliban leader Amir Hibatullah Akhundzada's regime sees the borderlands as Afghanistan, Pashtun land, not Pakistan. Founded in 1866 by the clerics Maulana Muhammad Qasim Nanodvi and Rashid Ahmad Gangohi, Deoband aimed to resist British rule by separating Islam from the seductions of westernization and modernity. The question of political power, that is the crushing of Mughal power in 1857, had led the clerics to believe that political issues were second to the revival of religion. The institution of Deoband was seen as a kind of tool through which Indian Muslims could be reintroduced to an authentic Islam and converted to its practices. This had not been the only tendency in Indian Islam, of course. In 1826, the mystic Sayyid Ahmad Barelvi and his followers had marched to the northwest, hoping to rally the Pashtun against the Sikh Empire. Things went well for them at first, but Sayyid Ahmad soon found his version of Islam rubbing up against Pashtun custom. Local traditions, like bathing naked in the river, were strictly prohibited. People caught doing so were initially fined 8 annas and later subjected to lashings, the historian Aisha Jalal records. Lands were handed over to Sayyid Ahmad's soldiers instead of the local tribals. And the clerics' decision to enter secluded women's quarters to administer punishments infuriated many local people. The Pashtuns eventually turned on the rebels, allowing their destruction by the Sikh army. The idea of theocratic states in the northwest, though, didn't go away. In 1914, the Deoband clerics Hussain Ahmad Madani, who would later win a Padma Bhushan, and Ubaidullah Sindhi called for Indian elites and the Afghan court to join in a jihad against the English. According to the clerics, historian Sana Haroon explains, the Pashtun tribes were seen as representing the ideal of a Muslim society founded on the very principles of the Prophet Muhammad. From this premise, Madani and Sindhi went on to reject the idea of Pakistan. Their decision would empower a wide range of ideological forces that rejected the division of Pashtun communities and territories. Late in the 19th century, meanwhile, things had begun to bubble inside Afghanistan itself. Tsar Alexander II's forces stormed into the Central Asian Emirate of Kokand, one of the Silk Route centers for trade in cotton, silk, livestock, kerosene, matches, and of course, slaves. Though General Mikhail Skobelev and Konstantin von Kaufmann made very short work of the emirate and soon brought the Ferghana Valley into Russian control, they immediately found themselves confronted by ethnic Kyrgyz and ethnic Uzbek revolts. Long, bitter fighting lay ahead. But the Russians eventually succeeded in pushing their way all the way to the Panjshir Valley in Afghanistan. The English feared Russia's southward push and what it might mean for the security of their borders of India. But they had long ago learned that fighting wars in Afghanistan was a dangerous and extremely expensive business. Emir Dost Muhammad, Afghanistan's ruler, had been given a purse of 6 lakh rupees, then about 60,000 pounds sterling, for ceding the Khyber Pass along with the regions of Kurram, Pishin and Sibi. Amir Abdul Rahman Khan, who succeeded Dost Muhammad, had expanded the kingdom's power. Abdul Rahman massacred rebellious Hazara communities and reclaimed Kandahar and Herat, which had been set up as independent emirates by the British. The British Raj, meanwhile, also became increasingly concerned about Islamist resistance cropping up based out of Afghanistan. The actual extent of so-called Wahhabi opposition to the Raj remains disputed by historians to this day. The British did stamp out so-called Wahhabi rebel formations at Ambala in 1864 and Patna in 1865, Malda and Rajmahal in 1870 and again in Patna in 1871. And events like the murder of Chief Justice Norman, remember the strange case we started with, gave fuel to these fears. But the idea that there were ideological threads linking the Northwest to these disturbances in the Gangetic Plains is at best a bit tenuous. So English Foreign Secretary Henry Durand arrived in Kabul in 1893 to sort out this problem. The real threat was collusion between Russia and England over Afghanistan. Abdur Rahman was persuaded to relinquish his claims to the Trans-Oxus River areas of Roshan and Shingnan in the north, which were claimed by Russia under an 1872-1873 Anglo-Russian agreement. In return, the Emir was given the Wakhan corridor, the narrow strip of land dividing China and Kashmir. Then Abdur Rahman agreed to a borderline that ran through the Pashtun lands. The exact terms of that part of the agreement, the division of the Pashtun lands, have been bitterly disputed, especially since it was written in English, a language Amir Abdur Rahman could not understand. The textual parts of the treaty and the roughly drawn line, 4 kilometers wide because of the pen it used, do not really align, creating a lot of confusion. Then there are legal questions. Is a boundary really the same thing as a border? And does the fact that Abdur Rahman continued to collect tribute from Chitral and Kunar on the British side of that boundary mean that they weren't Afghan, or did they remain Afghan? For much of the first half of the 20th century, British colonial forces meanwhile waged a merciless war against ethnic Pashtun who had now found themselves becoming part of British India. Air and land power were used to force the Pashtun into starvation, kill their livestock, and destroy their villages. The Fakir of EP, Haji Mirza Ali Khan Wazir, led a tenacious campaign against the British which continued until well after 1947. Though Nazi hopes of fueling this insurgency were defeated by British intelligence, the imperial power failed to defeat the insurgency itself. And so did the successor state of Pakistan. The ideas of Hussain Madni and Ubaidullah Sindhi gave ideological and political shape to Pashtun rebellion. This rebellion slowly drew layers of political actors, Islamists, nationalists, communists, all to causes that impacted well beyond the Northwest. The new nation of Pakistan, historian Faridullah Behzan writes, found itself at continuous war with Afghanistan after a Loya Jirga or Popular Assembly of the Pashtun people repudiated the Durand Line in 1949. King Zahir Shah, followed by Afghan President Muhammad Daoud Khan, demanded the creation of Pashtunistan, or the incorporation of all ethnic Pashtun territories into the Afghan state. For his part, Pakistani Prime Minister Zulfikar Ali Bhutto allied with Afghan Islamists to retaliate against these claims. After the Soviet intervention in Afghanistan in 1977, Islamist groups hoped the jihadists they backed would climb down from this Pashtunistan issue once and for all. The Islamists, though, proved as stubborn as the nationalists and the communists about the pursuit of Pashtun identity. Worse, the Islamists provided shelter to their Pakistani counterparts, the TTP. The forces Pakistan unleashed, journalist and author Abu Bakr Siddiqui has recorded in his excellent book on the subject, have now emerged as a threat to Pakistan itself, with jihadis demanding, I quote, a complete Islamic overhaul of the state and society. From 2024, not long after Pakistan stopped patting itself on the back for its supposed victory in Afghanistan, tensions have repeatedly broken out on the Afghanistan-Pakistan border, with murderous exchanges of fire claiming life on both sides. The visit Foreign Minister Muttaqi has made to Deoband signals to the Taliban rank and file that Afghan's new theocratic regime remains committed to old Pashtun ethnic nationalism, even at the cost of economic hardship and continuing bloodshed. I'm Praveen Swami and I'm a contributing editor to ThePrint. Thank you for watching this episode of Security Code.